welcome to Clickly. Today we are going to learn about function library. First, let's see a game effect together. When players press space or enter any of the 3 circle regions, a continuous explosion effect will appear. How is this effect achieved? Do we need to write 3 triggers and set the explosion effect for 3 times? Of course not. Clickly provides us a much easier way. Let's take a look together. Definition of function library. We can pack several commands into a function for repeated use. For example, John runs a farm. His daily work includes weeding, feeding horses, and cleaning barns. John does the same task over and over again, so he invents an automated robot to do all the work for him. From now on, the only thing John needs to do every day is starting the robot. A function is consistent of function description, parameter, and action. Function description defines how this function will be displayed in the trigger interface. Name represents the name of the packet statements. Description is the content and format of this function. Parameter is the variable that needs to be filled in the form trigger statements. When we create a parameter, we need to set the name and the type. Parameters are the bridge between the function library and the trigger. Action is the action list that will be performed when we call this function. Basically, in function library, we can pack several action commands that achieve a game effect into original action, which is called a custom function. For example, we design a cool effect set in Clickly. It can be used on any unit. The function description is like this. It is displayed in trigger interface like this. The unit here is the parameter we set in function library. Next, let's see how to use the function library in Clickly. Step 1. Edit the trigger components. Create 4 custom projectiles in Object Editor. Rename them to Explosion, Region Effect 1, Region Effect 2, and Region Effect 3, respectively. Go back to the main interface. Select the unit RAM and place it on the map. Place these 3 projectiles that we just created on the map. Then, draw 3 circle regions on them. Name them Region A, Region B, and Region C. Step 2. Edit the trigger. First, we need to create a new function in function library. The function description is create 5 explosion effects around player. The target effect is 5 explosions projectiles appearing continuously in a certain range around the unit in a short time. We will use run count timer to achieve the effect of projectiles appearing continuously. Then, we will create a variable to record the positions of the random points to create the projectiles. The detailed trigger action will be introduced in the next part. Then, we create 4 triggers, corresponding to the following events. Space key pressed, and generic unit enters the 3 circle regions we drew in the previous step. For actions, we can use the function we just created in function library directly. The logic is clear now. It's time to edit the triggers. Select trigger, let's go into the function library. Create a new function, rename it to 5 explosion effect. Add a new parameter player as a type unit. Add the function description, create 5 explosion effects around. Click on the left available parameter to call the parameter player. In action, select timer, run count timer. Set to execute immediately at intervals of 0.3 seconds, a total of 5 times. Then, in the action list of the timer, we create a variable lock player as the location point for the player. Create another variable, lock random, to record the positions of set. Lock player by 200 yards random real number from 0 to 360 degrees. That is, the position of set by 200 in any angle directions. Lastly, select projectile, create a location. Create projectile explosion at the position lock random and set the duration to be 3 seconds. The function is finally done. Next, let's create 4 triggers to call this function. The first trigger is key event. Select hardware input, key down, space, key pressed. Then, add an action. Select function where we can see the function 5 explosion effect that we create in a function library. Set the unit to be rem. The other 3 triggers are about region events. The first one, unit enters region A. For the event, select unit, generic unit event and region. Select region A for the region. In action, choose the function 5 explosion effect as well. Select get unit involved in the event as unit. In this way, trigger of region A is finished. Then, we continue to edit the triggers of region B and region C. Copy and paste the trigger of region A. Rename them to enter region B and enter region C. Then, modify the enter regions in the events. So far, all the triggers are completed. We can see that the same function is called by multiple events, which can greatly save the amount of data. If we want to change the action, such as the range of the explosion, we only need to modify the action once in the function library. Let's check the game and test the effect. How are you doing so far? Did you get it? Now it's time for a quick recap. Function library is also known as custom functions. We can pack several action commands into a function for repeated use. A function is consisted of function description, parameter, and action. Function library can reduce the amount of code and improve production efficiency.